Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. He's charged with second-degree murder and manslaughter in the death of George Floyd last summer. That death setting the stage for a summer of racial justice protests across the country. ABC's Alex Prochet is in Minneapolis this morning.
Eva, good morning. Jury selection begins tomorrow, but look at this fencing. There are barriers. There's going to be police presence. The entire Hennepin County Government Center is locked down. The state keenly aware of the attention this trial is getting. Jury selections just a day away in the case of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin, standing trial for the murder of George Floyd. There's high security for a case with even higher stakes. Barricades, razor wire, and extra fencing. Inside, access to the 18th floor courtrooms severely limited. The families of Chauvin and George Floyd only get one seat each. And it'll be live streamed. Tomorrow begins a 3-week process to find the 12 jurors and 4 alternates to decide this case. Potentials answering questions. Courtroom cameras won't show their faces.
One of the most important things is going to be to look to people who haven't already developed very strong feelings about the case, and that may not be easy.
Chauvin faces second-degree murder and manslaughter charges, to which he's pleaded not guilty. Last Memorial Day, Floyd was being taken into custody for allegedly buying cigarettes with a counterfeit $20 bill. Officers Thomas Lane and J. Alexander King seen on Floyd's lower half, Chauvin kneeling on his neck, as Toe Tao keeps outraged bystanders at bay. Court documents say Floyd was pinned for more than 9 minutes and 20 seconds. All 4 officers later fired, this video playing a crucial role. And ahead of tomorrow, a last-minute change. The Minnesota Court of Appeals ruling the judge in this case must now reconsider a third-degree murder charge against Chauvin.
This is the Debate Me channel. Okay, that's unacceptable. This is the Debate Me channel. If you're new to the channel, click on that subscribe button and click on the like button. And you are about to witness the next chapter of cancel culture. George Floyd will be canceled. Let me explain. One of the major topics that I cover on this channel is media bias. Bias in liberal media, bias in conservative media. I've been doing a lot of analysis about the types of bias that we see on both sides of the spectrum. The things that they cover, the things that they don't cover, the things that they over-report on, the things that they under-report on. If there's a riot from Antifa, it's not going to be seen on the left, most likely. If Trump does something wrong, we're probably not going to see it on the right. Right now, for example, let's give you a couple examples. Mitch McConnell's wife connected to the Communist Party in China. Obviously not reported on the right, obviously reported on the left. Trump administrator, part of the administration, found at the Capitol riot directly involved in the illegal and violent actions that we see. Of course, covered on the left, not covered on the right. Joe Biden saying, vote for me, you get $2,000 checks immediately. Fails to deliver. Fails to fight for $15 minimum wage. Fails to fight for $2,000 checks. Fails to fight for pretty much anything. Not covered on the left. So based on the analysis that I've seen, I'm now able to utilize that analysis of how the propaganda tactics work in liberal media versus conservative media. So now I'm going to start making more predictions based on the models that I've identified in terms of how they operate. So George Floyd, why will that be canceled by conservative media? Number one, generally speaking, conservative media doesn't care about what happened to George Floyd. There's no real serious level of compassion for this human being and what happened to him. Does not really matter. But just like you see in liberal media and conservative media, always you have to do the PR moves of pretending to care, right? Joe Biden pretending to care about Antifa, Donald Trump pretending to care about QAnon, or more accurately, white supremacists, right? Just you pressure them, they're like, oh, I condemn, right? The fake condemning, which I talk about a lot on my channel. But you've got to separate what is being said from actions being taken, so you can establish what's genuine and what is just the PR move. So a key clue that you can tell when someone really cares about something versus the fake outrage. When people care about something, they discuss it in detail, and they continue to discuss it in detail. Now, the reason you care about it could be because you generally have, like, as a human being, it bothers you, or it could be a profit motive. So, for example, conservative media certainly cares about Antifa riots. That doesn't mean they care about the destruction of property and all that stuff. They may not care about that. These are business people. They care about views and money, right? So they may not actually care about the property destruction. They may care about it from a profit perspective. They know their audience cares about it, so it's juicy content, so they continue to talk about it and cover it and go into detail about it. Look at what these Black Lives Matter people did. They did this, they did that. So you're going into detail and you elaborate and you talk about why it's bad and why it shouldn't happen, and you post more and more videos and that kind of thing. That is how you can see where they actually do care about it, whether it's for profit reasons or for reasons of compassion or personal, like this is something that bothers you, right? You look at the actions versus the words. Simply saying something bothers you and then you don't take much actions to back that up means that your words probably didn't mean much. So in terms of George Floyd, the coverage was mostly, I think, probably slow on the right initially, and then when they covered it, they probably spent minimal amount of time condemning the officer and saying this is wrong and this shouldn't happen, and spending most of the time making George Floyd the villain, right? Blaming the victim, right? So the general thing is sit around and wait for some way that you can make it somehow George Floyd's fault and focus your attention on that. Talk a lot about that. Dive deep into who was George Floyd, how much can I frame him as being a villain. That's what we want to talk about. We don't want to talk about or detail. Like, that's the thing. You stay away from the detail. If Antifa does something violent, you talk about the violence. You talk about, they crushed this thing, they burned that building, and those buildings belong to, right? You're going to detail. That's something you really care about. You don't care about George Floyd. You keep it very vague and simple, and you spend limited time about it. So you just say, it's pretty bad what happened, and we don't support that or whatever. Now let's spend 10 minutes talking about the left and their response and the rioting and how that's wrong. And actually, by the way, George Floyd, he was a criminal, and why do they try to make these criminals heroes and all that kind of stuff? Like, let's spend the time talking about the things we really do care about, which by doing that shows us that we don't really care about this human being that was killed. Right? And of course, on the left, it's the opposite, right? Liberal media, they focus on the profit. This is a juicy story, right? Black person killed, in this way, and it's on film. Racism again, right? They know that they have an audience that this is something that they will react to it. They'll have an emotional response to it. They'll share it. They'll talk about it. So you can make a lot of money for pushing that side of the story, right? So with that being said, I can extrapolate what's going to happen now with the coverage of the trial. So now we have this trial coming in. So in general, surface level, we're not going to see much coverage of the George Floyd trial on the right at all. Many channels will not cover it at all. Now, the first one who might cover it, with the exception of Fox. So Fox is a huge network. They cover a lot of different things. So Fox News, they're gonna probably cover it to some degree. But everyone else, all these independents, Crowder, Tim Pool, Blaze TV, Ben Shapiro, AONN, Newsmax, most of these guys are not gonna cover it at all. Because again, they don't care that George Floyd died. They don't care what the police officer did. They don't care about any of this stuff, right? The other thing to look at social media. Look at their Instagram, right? Instagram, Twitter. You might see them tweet stuff when it originally happened and say, this is wrong, we condemn it, and then that's it. No more discussion about that. Any discussion beyond that is making George Floyd he's the villain, blaming the victim, that kind of stuff, and also focus on the riots and things like that. Because generally, again, you don't care about this guy that he died. You don't care about the officer and how wrong the officer was, because you have a pro-police audience. So, you pretend to care about these things, but you really don't. So with that being said, most won't cover it at all. First one independent who might cover it will be Tim Pool. Tim Pool will cover it. High probability that he's going to do something and say, look at all the security. This is crazy. Either that it's too much, it's excessive, like why are they doing all this kind of stuff? Or that it's crazy that they have to do all of this stuff because of Black Lives Matter is out of control and Antifa's out of control and this is ridiculous, the barbed wire fence and all this kind of stuff, and it's disgusting, right? So again, don't care about the actual trial. Don't care about what happened to George Floyd. Don't care about seeing justice, right? You claim you're about law and order, but don't really genuinely care about law and order, right? Law and order is this trial, right? Determining guilt or innocence. And then if guilt is determined, then you look at the actual punishment, right? What are we going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again? Send a message, de-incentivize other officers from doing this, all that kind of stuff. That's law and order. If you really cared about that, then you would have most of conservative media covering the trial in detail. Here's the trial. Here's what's happening. So today, what happened in the opening briefings, they said this. Then there's no interest, so they're not going to be covering that for the most part, right? So Tim Pool again will cover probably the fact that there's all the security. Beyond that, you might see, depending on how much coverage, it's probably going to get a lot of coverage in the liberal media. When liberal media is covering something very heavily, it kind of forces the hand of conservative media. And if it's something that goes against their narrative, they're going to jump in and defend their narrative, right? So if you have all these people talking about it in liberal media, how bad the police officers are, and remember, you're the Blue Lives Matter clan, so you can't have people talking bad about cops, right? And then just the normal sort of profiting from this that you're going to see in liberal media, then eventually you might pull these guys out of the woodworks. But are they going to then talk about the trial? No. You might see some of them try to smear George Floyd's character yet again. They're going to say like, okay, this is a big thing. Everyone's talking about this. Okay, so let's remind everybody about how awful a person George Floyd is. George Floyd had this stuff in his system and blah, 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 blah. And remember, this is a guy that was checks and whatever. And back in the day, he punched a girl in the face and da-da-da. And this is the person that the left is championing, whatever. Or they're going to rehash the damage and destruction that happened from the riots. Oh, the riots and this and that and Black Lives Matter and Antifa and burning buildings and the left, they don't do anything about it. They just allow this to happen, blah, blah, blah. Whoa, wait a minute. What about the trial? You're not going to talk about the trial? You don't care about the trial? You don't care about law and order? You don't care about these officers actually, seeing their day in court and in terms of where this goes? Like, will they be found that actually they didn't break any laws and they were legit and they're let go? Like, you don't care about that. You just care about talking about Antifa and whatever, right? So again, this will prove my theory about whether they really care about George Floyd or not. If they discuss the actual trial itself, right, and show you what's happening, what the arguments are on both sides, outside of a conversation that's talking about Antifa and talking about the riots, and talking about the Fox Rick, talking about the how bad of a person George Floyd is, I don't think we're going to see that. So generally speaking, silence. Other than that, you're going to see victim blaming and shaming, which will prove my theory about their bias and also their not caring about holding police officers accountable. They'll say it. They'll go through the motions and they'll say these things. But here's a case where we have a trial where we can have some justice, right? Police officers that cross the line, right? And if you're for law and order, you want to make sure these officers get what's coming to them from a legal standpoint, all right? But since you don't care about that, you're not going to talk about that. Now, I urge you guys to check out these channels over the next few weeks. Stephen Crowder, Blaze TV, Tim Pool, AONN, Newsmax, Ben Shapiro, maybe Salty Cracker. He's kind of a weird guy. Go on their channels and observe them not covering the George Floyd trial, or observe them focusing mainly on painting the victim as the villain. Observe them focusing on the riots and the damage from the riots, right? Which shows that they're more interested in that than they are justice being served. They don't care about this human life that was snuffed out. So go on their channels in the next few weeks and observe, right? And if you see that what I predicted was actually true, spread the word. Spread the word. Let people know that I predicted this and I sent you there. And if turns out I'm wrong, if you go and you see, oh wow, they're actually covering the trial in depth, come back here. Thumb the video down. Comment negatively. Say, hey, you were wrong. Conservative media actually did a really good job. I don't think it's going to happen. Right? But if I'm wrong, come back and let me know. I got no problem with that. If I'm wrong, call me out. I'm predicting George Floyd will be canceled by conservative media. And if I'm wrong, come back and let me know. Thanks for watching. This is the Debate Me channel. If you're new to the channel, once again, subscribe, click on the like button. Be well. Man, I totally messed up my outro.